Solo Leveling by Gong. Chapter 63 The King of Beasts. The next day, a tabloid that had long since replaced their coverage of celebrities for gossip about hunters printed a rather provocative headline. Jin Woo-sung and Hein Cha spotted at theme park. Birth of the ultimate power couple? Accompanying the article were pictures taken by cell phones of Jin Woo and Hein at the amusement park and riding off to an unknown destination on the back of a magic beast. Because Jin Woo and Hein had requested that their private lives be protected by the association, newspapers weren't normally allowed to report such information. However, considering the size of this scoop, this particular tabloid decided to publish the article regardless of the consequences. The article blew up. The public had grown tired of the non-stop news about the monolithic gate, but the gossip involving two prominent S-rank hunters revived them. People were keen to read more about the best male hunter in the world and the best female hunter in Korea, and news about the couple traveled like wildfire online. If Jin Woo-sung and Hein Cha get married and have a kid, Jin Woo Jr. should be able to defeat all the magic beasts, right? Jin Woo Jr. LOL. They haven't officially announced that they're dating. You're jumping the gun, SMH. Based on your logic, Jin Woo-sung's parents would be super powerful. OP is just a troll who doesn't know how a person awakens as a hunter. Yeah, but who isn't hoping that they're really dating? I hope it's real. Their surroundings would be destroyed if they ever got into an argument. LOL. I live in a suburb of Seoul, and I thought the world was doomed when I saw the gate hanging over Gangnam. But hearing about hunters going out on dates and having fun is reassuring and makes me think we still have hope. Same. I wish they'd stop reporting about the gate at this point. Hunter Sung and Hunter Cha, please do something about that massive gate or monolithic gate or whatever it's called. Tisk tisk. President Yunho Baek of the White Tiger Guild clicked his tongue as he set down the tabloid. That explained why he'd noticed a difference in the way Hein looked at Jin Woo versus others. The news itself wasn't why he was irked. This headline is totally stupid. What do they mean by the ultimate power couple? Manager sang that and noted the president's displeasure. What's wrong with it, sir? I would think those two are more than qualified for that title. It doesn't matter which woman Hunter Sung has by his side. They'd still be the most powerful couple. This headline is pointless. After contemplating Jin Woo with other partners, Sangin had to concede that point. Even if Jin Woo went out with that one female hunter still in high school, they'd be unbeatable, in large part because Jin Woo himself was overwhelmingly strong. You're right, President Baek. I told you. Sangin nodded as he took a sip of his instant coffee. He turned his gaze out the window. Oh geez, the air pollution from fine dust keeps getting worse. I'm scared to even open a window these days. Sangin frowned and went to close the half-open window, but President Baek held out a hand to stop him. Wait. Pardon? President Baek opened the window all the way and stuck out his hand. This isn't fine dust. The smog that covered Seoul wasn't the usual fine dust pollution, but a bone-chilling mist. How strange. It was the middle of fall, so it shouldn't be nearly this cold. President Baek shuddered, and he stared out the window with eyes of a beast activated. I have a bad feeling about this. Jin Woo woke up first. Hein must have been exhausted from yesterday, as she didn't stir. When was the last time he'd woken up next to someone like this? Jin Woo carefully got up and ventured into the woods. It was definitely around here. He washed up in the stream he'd luckily stumbled across the last time he was there. On the way back to Hein, he stopped in his tracks as something caught his eye. What's this? It was a sapling with newly sprouted buds. That in itself wasn't anything special, but instead of green leaves, its leaves were a shiny silver color. It was unlike anything else on Earth, and it exuded a very small amount of magic power that would have been hard to detect by anyone other than Jin Wu. This tree isn't of this world. Since its magic power signature was different, he concluded it wasn't a magic beast. Upon closer inspection, Jin Wu noticed other silvery leaves poking out of the ground in the vicinity. They were a stark contrast from the surrounding trees, with leaves that were steadily drying up. The dirt is changing. Was this also part of the ruler's plan? Or was this an after effect of the magic beasts? Jin Wu dug up some soil, gave it a sniff, and rubbed his fingers together as he let it fall back to the ground. He could smell weak magic power from the soil as well. Earth was already imbued with magic power, and humans may be the only creatures to not realize this. At that moment, Jin Wu sensed from a distance that Hain had woken up. He dusted off his hands. While the changes were worrisome, he had something much more important to focus on at this very second, to reassure Hain that he hadn't vanished in the middle of the night. He made no attempt to hide his approach, and she let out a small sigh of relief as soon as she caught sight of him. He greeted her with a smile. "Did you sleep well?" For some reason, her cheeks flushed, and she avoided making eye contact as she replied, "Yes." When he shot her a puzzled look, she looked tentatively back at him. "Where did you go?" Jin Wu pulled off the towel around his shoulders and dried his wet hair. "I went to wash up." Speaking of, he realized that she must also want to get cleaned up, as even the slightest ocean breeze left hints of salt on one's body. "But I can't let a lady wash up in a place like this." Jin Wu grinned when a solution that would allow them to both bathe and get something to eat popped into his mind. "I know a hotel with a fantastic breakfast nearby. Would you like to grab a bite there?" Hain remained tight-lipped as she nodded in acquiescence. Jin Wu held out his hand to help her up before summoning Kaisel. "Cree!" Hain tilted her head as she watched Kaisel spread his wings. "Didn't you say it was nearby? It would take me about 5 minutes if I ran at full speed. Then shall we run there together?" 5 minutes at Jin was full speed. Hain climbed onto Kaisel without another word. It's nice that she catches on quickly. Jin Wu settled into the spot in front of her, and Kaisel rose into the sky. Koreans had gotten used to seeing Kaisel on TV, but how would the Japanese hotel staff react to seeing a dragon with their own eyes? Jin Wu hoped that the chef wouldn't be too traumatized as Kaisel headed in the direction of the hotel. It appeared out of nowhere. The first person to encounter it was a middle-aged man exiting the Hunters Association headquarters after being evaluated as a B-rank awakened being. Plump. He stopped as it seemingly appeared out of nowhere and bumped his shoulder. "Huh?" The middle-aged man's eyes trailed up the shadow cast on the ground to come face to face with a hulking man standing nearly 7 feet tall. He was clad in some kind of leather and had a bestial air about him. Or rather, he seemed like an actual beast. His sheer size made him stand out, so the two men quickly drew people's attention. "Are they going to fight? Wow, that guy is huge. Even Dongwook Ma would have a tough time against him. Is that older man out of his mind? Is he trying to get sent to the ER?" With so many people watching him, the middle-aged man felt like a heavy silence had suddenly fallen on the bustling street. Normally, he would have apologized and just walked away. But he was a different man now. The man who used to pander to his superiors and get ignored by his subordinates was no more. "I'm a B-rank awakened being now." B-rank hunters were up there in power. He didn't need to grovel at this normal civilian who probably thought it was okay to push people around because of his size. He gently put his briefcase on the ground and spoke forcefully. "Hey! You should apologize when you bump into someone." As his heart began to pound in his chest, he could feel magic power coursing through his body. His cells seemed to be telling him that he was alive. It was time for him to start his new life as a hunter. The bestial man stood there quietly, seemingly pacified by the other man's mettle. Encouraged by his opponent's reaction, the middle-aged man continued. "Do you think this is over if you just stand there? When you do something wrong, you should own up to it and ask for forgi ale." The bestial man roughly grabbed the middle-aged man by the head and lifted him up off the ground to the screams of onlookers. "Guh! Oh!" Veins began to pop out of the middle-aged man's head as the beast of a man squeezed. A bear. No, a tiger. What kind of predator, whether it be a lion, shark, alligator, or poisonous snake, could instill this kind of overwhelming fear in humans? The instinctual terror the human felt in front of a creature at the top of the food chain made him wet his pants. Ack, God. And eventually, blood and brains splattered everywhere to the sound of something shattering. Crack. Ah! But the bestial man didn't stop there. He started devouring the corpse splayed on the ground. He's eating him. Who? What the hell? What's he doing? The man's feeding frenzy was over in a flash. He wiped bits of human flesh from his mouth as he straightened up. There wasn't a trace of sanity in the man's eyes. They were clearly the eyes of a beast. Some people had run away screaming, but there were still plenty of curious onlookers watching the beast's barbaric display. The beast roared at the crowd in an indecipherable language. "Hear me, lowly humans! From this moment forth, I shall hunt you!" Tears streamed down the faces of trembling onlookers, paralyzed by the thunderous roar. The beast's sharp fangs were in full view, giving him an almost regal visage. "I will tear your flesh with my fangs and claws!" It was the king of beasts. The Fong monarch gnashed his teeth, his bellow shaking the entire street. "Stop me if you can!" President Wu caught wind of the horrifying creature that had appeared out of nowhere in downtown Seoul. "How many victims?" "It's impossible to get a body count at this point." It had first been sighted in the neighborhood of Myeongdong and was traveling in a straight line, killing every human it laid eyes on. "If it continues on the same path, it's heading for the Hunters Association." President Wu bit his lower lip and clenched his fists tightly. "We've already got our hands full with that gate. Where in the world did this monster come from?" However, this was not the time to lose one's cool. They had to focus on trying to stop the creature. "What's Hunter Sung's status? We can't reach him." "Damn it!" President Wu cursed inadvertently. He had just received a report that the monster had easily annihilated one of the guilds that had been sent out to intercept it. The one good thing was that it was moving slowly, almost as if it was waiting for something. But nonetheless, it was all too obvious that the number of victims would increase astronomically the longer they couldn't stop it. That they couldn't contact the most powerful weapon in their arsenal was the worst possible case. "If it comes to it, then I'll step in." As he gritted his teeth in determination, good news arrived. "Mr. President." Jinchul jumped out of his seat at the sight of the employee bolting into the room without so much as a knock. "Were you able to contact Hunter Sung?" "Not yet, sir. But we just received word that a renowned hunter was in the vicinity and is going to engage the monster." "What? Who?" "It's Leonard, Germany's strongest hunter, sensed the monster approaching as it left a trail of blood. Can I do this?" As a hunter, he was unable to ignore the cries of innocent people. Based on the Hunter Command Center's point system, Leonard ranked 12th in the world. Seeing people's expressions of relief as they recognized him made him feel responsible for their safety. It wasn't a matter of whether he could. He had to do it. It was his duty as a hunter. Perhaps it might have been fate that Leonard was in Seoul to stop the monster. Face grim, Leonard had unbuttoned the top few buttons on his shirt and taken a step toward the beast when a deep voice came from behind him. "Get out of my way!" As soon as Jin-woo had entered an area with cell service, his phone started ringing nonstop. The Hunters Association? He frowned when he saw the caller ID. Had something bad happened in the short interim he'd been away? He quickly answered his phone. "H. Hunter Sung? Yes, this is Jin-woo Sung." Jin-woo replied cautiously, the urgency in the other party's voice putting him on edge. "What's the matter?" Actually, the president will fill you in. I'll put you through to him right now." A matter that needed the president's direct involvement? Jin-woo realized the gravity of the situation as he waited for Jinchul to come on the line. Jinchul picked up without delay and rapidly spoke. "Hunter Sung, why was it so hard to reach you? I didn't have reception until a minute ago." The forest of trees had been polluted by frequent dungeon breaks, so cell phone reception was practically non-existent in the area. Jin-woo hadn't thought it would be a problem, since he had placed a shadow soldier with everyone he wanted to protect. Did that massive gate open? But there were at least 2 days left before that was supposed to happen. Jin-woo ran through different possibilities in his mind, but before he could ask, Jinchul quickly and efficiently relayed the emergency. "A monster has appeared and is on a rampage in the middle of Seoul." Jin-woo had been feeling rejuvenated after his short break, but now his heart dropped. "How large is the group of magic beasts?" "It's not a group. There's only one." "Just the one?" Hunters from all over Korea were gathered in Seoul presently, and they were waiting with bated breath for the possible dungeon break from the monolithic gate. Additionally, the association had distributed weapons to the hunters who hadn't had sufficient gear. But they still can't handle one magic beast that appeared out of nowhere? Jin-woo listened with bewilderment as Jinchul continued his explanation. "A guild went after the bastard and was decimated in a heartbeat. It doesn't appear to be an ordinary magic beast." "What's its location?" "It appears to be near the Grand Hotel in Seoul." Could it be a mere coincidence? His mouth went dry at the mention of the luxury hotel Thomas Andre was staying at. His bad feeling was proving correct when Jinchul anxiously told him, "I just got a phone call that Hunter Andre is facing off against it." That couldn't be right. Jin-woo had left a shadow soldier with Thomas just in case, with the order to signal him right away if he sensed anything odd. He hadn't heard a peep from the soldier despite Thomas single-handedly battling a creature that had wiped out an entire guild. Wait a minute. Something was very off. The signals from his soldiers in Seoul were very weak, like something was interfering with them. What's going on? An overpowered new enemy, a national-level hunter as its opponent, and a bunch of jammed signals. Could it be? Jin-woo pressed Jinchul as one possibility popped into his mind. "President Wu, does that monster have a shadow?" "Pardon? I need to know if that monster has a shadow." Jinchul's voice paused before hurriedly answering his query. "Oh my goodness! You're right, Hunter Sung. I've just confirmed through a photograph that the monster doesn't have a shadow." Shit! Recalling that the ice elf who had attacked President Go was also missing a shadow, Jin-woo yelled. "Don't let Thomas engage that monster." Thomas Andre had probably been the target from the start. "Sorry, but he's already..." Time was of the essence. Jin-woo didn't need to hear any more. He activated Shadow Exchange with the soldier assigned to Thomas. Ping. A hologram-like message popped up with an unpleasant alarm. The designated shadow soldier cannot be found. Jinwoo tried several more times, but the result was the same. Ping, ping. The designated shadow soldier cannot be found. The designated shadow soldier cannot be found. How was this happening? Jinwoo was stunned. My soldier is gone? The shadow soldier he had strategically placed for the express purpose of using shadow exchange had vanished into thin air. Jinwoo was unable to sense his presence anywhere. He could clearly tell that the connection between him and the soldier attached to Thomas had been severed. It was a similar sensation as when Jinwoo would send a soldier back to the void. A shadow soldier had been forcibly terminated. Confused, Jinwoo blurted out, "What the hell is going on?" A deep voice came from behind Leonard. "Get out of my way!" Leonard was hit with déjà vu, but his reaction was the complete opposite of the previous incident. "Thomas Andre!" His face brightened at the sight of the man large enough to block out the sun. Thomas strode past Leonard, and even those who had been screaming and fleeing the scene slowed in their tracks as they recognized the great national-level hunter. "He's that American hunter! T.H. Thomas? Goliath! It's Goliath!" Even Leonard, a fellow hunter at the top of the field, felt his heart pounding excitedly as he watched Thomas advance. So the civilians who were running away as if they were being pushed by the beast's horrifying aura were ecstatic. "Yes! Thank God for Thomas!" Some people collapsed to the ground as their legs gave out in sheer relief. Thomas barked at the hunters, who had been rendered immobile by the beast's staggering power. "Don't just stand there, you idiots! Clear everyone out of the area!" The bellow of a national-level hunter snapped them back into action. Those who understood English rushed to evacuate the remaining civilians from the area, and Leonard joined them. Thomas stood in the middle of the road, acting as a barrier as the beast leisurely approached them. Thomas removed his sunglasses and narrowed his eyes. The beast was covered in blood. Although he had the appearance of a human, he was definitely something otherworldly. Thomas growled as he took in the sight of body parts of the creature's victims strewn about in his wake. This beast didn't know his place and went too far. As if to mock Thomas's fury, the beast bared his fangs, displaying blood-red teeth with pieces of flesh stuck in them. A rabid animal should be put down, no? Thomas leveled a cold glare at the beast. Enforcement. His muscles became armor-like, and his already hulking frame grew larger. Now bigger than the beast, the man they called Goliath charged at the creature to test his power against him. Those watching Thomas from afar were reminded of a tank as they felt the ground shaking with each heavy step. The beast smacked his lips at his new prey, then made his move as well. The two huge men were face to face in no time. They sized each other up for a moment before the two beings, both strong enough to smash concrete as easily as a block of tofu, let their fists driven by magic power fly. Pow, 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 pow. The other hunters were astonished by the show of brute strength. A single punch would mean instant death for them, yet both the beast and Thomas continued to exchange blows without bothering to defend themselves. "I can do this." Thomas was sure of it. Kapow! His next punch knocked the beast's head sideways. It was thrilling to feel his left fist connect. After losing to Jinwoo, Thomas's confidence had waned slightly, but his head was back in the game. Pow, 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 pow. After gradually pushing the beast back with a barrage of blows, Thomas used a punch at full swing to bring the beast sprawling. Kapow! Crack! The beast skidded across asphalt, splitting the road in two, before finally crashing into a building. The hunters watching the fight were cheering in delight. But Thomas himself wasn't pleased. No, the attack wasn't as effective as I thought it'd be. He could still sense the beast's hostility coming from under the debris of the building. Swoosh! Shwoop! Hunks of metal shot out like missiles through the thick cloud of dust swirling around them. Thomas kicked aside the cars flying at him, then drew the hiding beast toward him using the skill gravitation. Whoom! As soon as the thrashing beast was right in front of Thomas's nose, the hunter pulled out his most powerful skill. Demolish! The muscles of Thomas's arms expanded until they looked like they were about to burst. He slammed both fists into the ground. Kaboom! A horrific shock wave struck the beast. Arg! The beast was thrown up in the air, landing unceremoniously. Without missing a beat, Thomas leaped on top of him and delivered another round of punches using the skill-heavy blow. Pow, 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 pow. Yay! The people who had been anxiously watching the fight between Goliath and the beast cheered. The other hunters were grinning from ear to ear. From everyone's vantage point, the fight was over. It was an indisputable victory for Thomas, as expected of the strongest national-level hunter. However, Thomas had broken out into a cold sweat despite being the one who had his opponent on the ropes. What's this? The closer he got to victory, the more it felt like anxiety was tightening around his throat. Each strike hit its mark, and the target wasn't resisting. But why was Thomas feeling uneasy despite absolutely dominating in the fight? And then it hit him, the eyes. It was the beast's eyes. His gaze hadn't changed throughout their fight, showing no reaction to the thrashing he was receiving. He seemed to be egging Thomas on to do his best. Incensed, Thomas raised his clenched fists high in the air. His shoulder muscles expanded as an incredible amount of magic power gathered in his shoulders, arms, wrists, and fists. This would cinch it. Could the beast survive being directly hit by Demolish? Thomas swung his arms down with all his might. Demolish! He saw the exact moment his opponent blinked, his eyes transforming from those of a human to those of a beast. The beast easily blocked his strongest blow with a single hand. A chill ran down Thomas's spine as he stared at his immobilized hands. This is an impressive show of power for a mere puppet of a fragment. Thomas frowned at what sounded like growls. What? That was when the creature's black hair turned white and began to grow longer. His nails transformed into claws, his teeth sharpened, and white fur covered his entire body. A werewolf. But a white werewolf had never been observed in the last 10 years. What? What are you? Thomas shuddered at the frightening amount of magic power in front of him. Instead of answering, the beast tightened his grip and crushed the bones in Thomas's hands. Crack! Arg! Everyone was taken aback at one of the most powerful hunters in the world letting out a cry of anguish. A news helicopter circled overhead, capturing footage of Thomas writhing in agony. A national-level hunter had set out to put an end to a monster that showed up in Seoul, the city everyone had their eyes on because of the monolithic gate. It was hard to believe that that same hunter seemed to be losing. But how? Everyone watching the battle either with their own eyes or on a monitor desperately prayed that wasn't the end, but their hopes were dashed as the beast grabbed Thomas by the wrist and slammed him down. Blam! This time, the beast was the one to straddle Thomas. Arg! The man known as Goliath tried to resist the beast with his broken hand as he coughed up blood, but he didn't stand a chance against the beast's true form. The beast pushed Thomas's head into the ground and howled toward the sky. Grah! The terrifying sound pierced the ears of everyone who heard it as it echoed across the entire city like thunder. Beasts didn't pick fights. They hunted prey. The roar contained an incredible amount of magic power that forced other hunters one by one to their knees. The beast snickered. "Are you scared?" Predators delighted in the feat of catching their prey. Thomas wasn't giving up, though. He struggled to make a fist with his broken hand and countered with a punch. Pow! The beast didn't even flinch. As he searched the beast's emotionless gaze, Thomas was reminded of a wall that endlessly stretched out toward the sky. He had experienced this feeling once before. How strange that the beast's eyes reminded him of Jean Wu. Why? Thomas lost his train of thought as the beast threw punches that knocked his head from side to side. Kapow! Gaw! That was only the beginning. Pow, pow, pow! The beast's punches rained down on Thomas in a reversal of earlier. He attacked non-stop, as if demonstrating what a proper attack was. Pow, 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 pow! While the beast hadn't reacted to being punched, Thomas yelped with each blow he took. Ack! The beast relished the pain he was inflicting, but he suddenly spotted something behind Thomas. The beast pulled back, intently observing Thomas's shadow. "I see there's a rat hiding here." Schlup! The beast plunged his hand into Thomas's shadow and grabbed a hold of something. Shoot! The beast pulled out an ant shadow soldier, thrashing in vain against the powerful grip around his throat. Scraw! Soldiers of the Shadow Monarch couldn't be eliminated through ordinary means, but the one gripping the ant's neck was rather extraordinary. As a higher being, the Fong Monarch was able to focus his spirit energy and erase the ant soldier from existence. Gaw! The ant soldier let out a scream, turning to ash as it was sent back into the void. The beast smirked at the gray ash scattering in the wind. Meanwhile, Thomas had managed to stand up and position himself behind the beast to put him in a secure headlock. It wasn't over until the very end, and despite his broken hand, Thomas's arms and shoulders were still in working order. The pressure he applied was strong enough to crush a metal post. Huff, huff! Thomas tried to regulate his quickening breath as he focused on the attack. There was no turning back. He wouldn't get a second chance if he let go now. He narrowed his eyes and clenched his jaw. Crack, crack. He heard the unpleasant sound of bones breaking. If it was coming from the beast's neck, Thomas would still have hope. Yes. But soon, the adrenaline wore off, and Thomas screamed as he belatedly felt the pain. Arg! The beast had grabbed the arm around his neck and shattered it. The beast then took hold of Thomas by the head and bashed it against the ground. Wham! Those watching the scene unfold on screens had to turn away after seeing Goliath's arm flopping around. It was an awful sight, but the gruesome scene didn't end there. The beast leaped on top of the prone body of Thomas and started feasting on his flesh and bone with sharp, knife-like teeth. Ew! Although Thomas desperately fought back, it seemed hopeless. Blood gushed out, and pieces of flesh flew everywhere. Gaia! The hunters keeping the civilians away stumbled back at the ghastly sight. The hopeful civilians had long since scattered, frightened out of their wits. But one hunter shot out of the crowd and slammed himself into the beast. What? Drunk on victory and distracted by the taste of his loot, the beast was thrown by the surprise attack. Thomas recognized Leonard hovering over his body and attempted to warn him. Run! But Leonard shook his head. I'm a hunter too. Though he was weaker than Thomas, Leonard had sworn an oath to himself when he decided to become a hunter. He would never turn his back on an ally. While Thomas wasn't a guildmate, Leonard counted him as a distinguished ally, since they shared a common enemy. No matter what Thomas thought of him, Leonard could not back down. Still, just looking at him gives me the chills. Leonard's legs quivered as the beast snarled at him. furious that his meal had been interrupted. Thomas saw that the German hunter was trembling and spoke with much difficulty. "You'll be killed." Leonard was acutely aware of that. He hadn't brought his gear with him, and his best attack skill, charge, had barely pushed the beast back. Titles like "Germany's Strongest" or "The 12th Hunter in the World" meant little in this situation. No regrets. Even if this meant the end for Leonard, he'd make the same call again and again. Better to die honorably than to live cowardly. This was the right decision. This was the right decision. Leonard kept that in mind as death barreled toward him. This was the right decision. The beast was in front of him in a flash, maw opening impossibly wide to devour him. Leonard threw a punch with everything he had. As he did, his life flashed before his eyes. It had been won without many difficulties, thanks to the power he'd been blessed with. He'd lived a good life, hadn't he? Leonard smiled contentedly as he looked down the beast's throat. This was indeed the right decision. He had lived a proud life until the end. He closed his eyes, expecting he'd never open them again, as the beast swallowed his head. Kapow! Leonard's eyes shot open at the sudden bang in front of him. What? The beast had been blasted dozens of meters away, tumbling to the ground from Leonard's punch. The asphalt road was cracked, cars were pushed away, and some streetlights were bent. Huh? Had he possessed a power he hadn't been aware of? In a daze, he looked down at his fist and finally realized someone else was standing beside him. Oh! Leonard's voice hitched, and he cried out in joy. Hunter Jin Woo-sung! He'd cut it way too close. If Jin Woo hadn't placed a shadow soldier with Leonard back when he'd visited the guild office, Jin Woo likely wouldn't have made it here in time. Once Jin Woo had confirmed the shadow soldier attached to Thomas had vanished, he had tried shadow exchange with the only other soldier in the area, who knew it'd be the one attached to Leonard. Thanks to that, he was able to save both men. Jin Woo heaved a sigh of relief after hurriedly inspecting Thomas's injuries. They were quite serious, but Thomas would live. Lacking the energy to speak, Thomas could only look up at Jin Woo, who nodded at him wordlessly, thankful that the American had bought him some time. When Jin Woo turned around, he was greeted by an emotional Leonard. Hunter-sung, thank you for stopping the beast. Could you please take Thomas somewhere safe? Jin Woo politely asked Leonard in English. Leonard nodded enthusiastically. That would be a piece of cake compared to fighting the monster. Of course. I've got this. Leonard carefully helped Thomas up and rushed off. Jin Woo turned his attention to the beast, who was slowly getting up. Intense hostility radiated from him, and he was clearly on another level from other magic beasts. I knew it. His hunch was correct. This bastard had the same energy as the ancient ice elf Jin Woo had encountered. He was one of the monarchs aiming for the hunters. But unlike the ice elf, there was no panic on his face. Despite the interruption, the beast seemed calm, even relaxed. Why is that? For a creature that looked halfway between a human and a wild animal, he was unexpectedly composed. As Jin Woo pondered this, the beast emerged from the rubble. He sloshed something around in his mouth before spitting out broken teeth. The beast couldn't hide his surprise. So it's true. The shadow bastard scent is mixed with the human scent. The beast sniffed the air, fascinated. But how is a mere human able to channel this much power from a higher level of existence? I leveled up, asshole. Instead of answering, Jin Woo unsheathed Kamish wrath. He had tons of questions for these so-called monarchs, but he decided to save the interrogation until after he'd finished the beast off. Fury rolled from Jin Woo as he swept his eyes over the remains of victims strewn all over the street. an unforgettable voice came from next to the beast. "The architect has probably found a way. The Shadow Monarch and the architect have been in cahoots for a while now." The light fog around them gathered like smoke, coalescing into a humanoid figure. Is that the ancient ice elf? The Frost Monarch, who had been concealing his presence in the fog, finally revealed himself. It was no wonder Jin Wu had noted that the fog surrounding the whole city was an unnatural phenomenon as soon as he came into contact with it. Another voice came from behind him. "Does that mean I can eat this human then?" Jin Wu looked over his shoulder for the source of the shrill woman's voice, and was met with an incredible sight. Bzzzzzzzzz. Insects poured out from the sewers and came together in a swarm that transformed into an imposing woman. "I've always wanted to know what another monarch tasted like." Jin Wu's expression grew dark as enemies appeared on all sides. His shadow soldiers hadn't been silenced to prevent him from disrupting their hunt, but to hide their numbers. It was a trap laid in order to catch Jin Wu. Emergency notifications from the system popped up in front of him. "The Frost Monarch, King of the Snowfolk, has designated you as an enemy. The Fog Monarch, King of Beasts, has designated you as an enemy. The Plague Monarch, Queen of Insects, has designated you as an enemy." 3 enemies on a whole other level revealing themselves at once had the dormant black heart pumping wildly. Ba dump, be a dump, be a dump. This was good. Jin Wu smirked. The villains thought they had him surrounded, but he wasn't alone. In fact, the monarchs were the ones who were surrounded. Jin Wu focused his perception so as not to miss a single move made by the monarchs as he summoned his army. "Come out!